One of the most controversial speakers in the modern era. It's only the Soundcore Motion Boom. Do you work for Soundcore? Clearly, I don't work for them anymore because I pointed out some of the issues with the Soundcore Motion Boom Plus. We're going to do it again.
Good job.
Although, you should know at this point, before you switch off, this is all about the firmware upgrade or update from 0.29 to 0.34. Have they fixed what we kept saying about the harsh sound? Now, again, not everybody says it was harsh. I said before, I say it again, it's going to be one of the most divisive speakers we have ever known in the terms of the people that love it and the terms of people that hate it. And you're going to be really on one camp or the other, some in the middle, but most on either side. Because it's got serious issues, but it can be seriously good at the same time. What do you mean good out? Well, for how loud it goes, it's very, very light, and it's reasonably priced, around 180 quid, $180. Clearly will be coming down very, very shortly. But at the moment, around that price, nothing really to touch it for the weight and how loud it goes. With a serious punch, but with serious aggravation on the eardrums, because it had 6 kilohertz peak. They kept saying they would fix it. We've got firmware update 0.34. Has it been fixed? But here's something it won't fix in firmware. A lot of you are complaining about these passive radiators. I have to say to my ears, they don't sound that great. They give you bass, yes, but you can clearly differentiate the passive radiator from the rest of the frequency response, and that's what we would call not gelling. So for me already it sounded a bit dodgy. You're telling me on a long play, especially when it gets hot, the passive radiator starts bulging and bulging to the point where it'll stop moving because it's getting bigger than the surround, or it's scraping on the surround, all sorts of issues. I'm also getting reports of cutting out. I find it only cuts out when I'm messing with the custom EQ. Switch off the app, it's then fine, but lots of reports of it cutting in and out. You know, lots of early reports on lots of different issues. That's a worry. There's the strip down showing the woofers are rated at 25 watts, the tweeters rated at 15 watts, and they say 30 watts plus 10 watts. It could still be exactly in spec as they have said. They could still be sending 30 watts to those woofers. They may have already tested it and know that it can handle it. Just because it's a 15 watt tweeter doesn't mean to say it needs to have. So these are the max specs for obviously the drivers, beyond which you shouldn't really be pushing it, because that's basically what they're saying on the limits. But they may think otherwise. However, they may be using different drivers and different versions. Hello, JBL, we know where you are.
JBL.
They may have changed the drivers from early versions, or the prototype or beta versions, although we appear to be a beta test. We all seem to work for Soundcore now. We are all beta testers. We know that because it's changed considerably. From the moment I got it, didn't have a 6 kilohertz peak. Go into the app, and here's the problem now with what is happening with Soundcore. You're now forced to do firmware updates. I don't know if it's just on that speaker, because you tell me the Motion Boom has an update. I haven't looked at that yet. Before there's an update. Can you test it before and after? And what I would do, I'd go in, I'd switch from default and then custom EQ, and I could test both of those before and after. But no, whatever I'm stuck on at the point in which I switch on the app, you can do nothing else before you update. So I have to tell you, sorry about these guys and girls, the couple that are out there. Not many women watch my channel. I don't know if that's about me or about speakers, but anyway. So this firmware does not say bugs fixed. Wow, they didn't fix any bugs. Oh, but hang on a second. It says optimized high frequency sound quality. Everyone's complaining, almost everyone, well not everybody, but the majority. It sounds harsh. There's a 6 kilohertz peak, which is ridiculous. We can't listen to it for long periods unless you're on the beach, you're outside, you're at a party, and basically you're on something anyway, and it doesn't really matter. But they've tweaked it a little bit, so they've optimized. No, we haven't fixed anything. There was nothing wrong with it. We just optimized it. But that's great. It's actually telling you what they've done, and they're forcing it on you. You have no choice. It doesn't let you switch from where you were, which means I was stuck in custom EQ. I couldn't test default. So the only thing I can test before and after is indeed my own custom mode. The good thing is that's still based on the signature mode. People still argue about this. I have to tell you, custom EQ with sliders set to 0 is the signature sound. So we can still test for any changes. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to test it at 60% of volume. So exactly both times, before the update, after the update, 29, 34, speaker set to 60% and played back relatively. So you hear all the differences. All of you moaning about normalizing, and all of those who don't even understand what normalizing is, and so you just think it must be bad because another channel told you that. Fine. But anyway, in this first test, exactly how all the relative changes came from before and after. No normalizing. Yay!
I beg, steal, and borrow. I'm taking all the love from the world, but I can't seem to find it. I'm looking so I can feel better, feel like I'm good tomorrow. Tomorrow, I beg, steal, and borrow. I'm looking at life passing by the window, asking how do you know if there's a way to find the truth. Yeah, I wonder when I will find the lost and lonely. Could it be that only the lost can find a way? I'm hoping the time passes by day till I die. I don't know. I don't feel alive. I just don't feel right. Yeah, I'm taking all the love from the world, but I can't seem to find it. I'm looking so I can feel better, feel like I'm good tomorrow. Tomorrow, I beg, steal, and borrow. I'm taking all the love from the world, but I can't seem to find it. I'm looking so I can feel better, feel like I'm good tomorrow. Tomorrow, I beg, steal, and borrow.
Could only compare custom mode, but it's an EQ overlay of the signature sound, the default sound, so it still tells us what the changes are. Quite clear to see. 150 Hz and down, firmware 0.34 is a downward slope. They've increased the downward slope relative to the bass below 150 Hz, the effect of which is you've got a bigger bass, a warmer sound, and that is helping to smother the 6 kHz peak, which is the main root of the harshness, but not the only root of this Motion Boom Plus speaker. They've done nothing about that 6 kHz peak. It remains. The only thing they have done, relatively, increase the bass. They've done that by reducing the mids and the highs, and it's quite strange.
What they called optimized for high frequency is it's basically just a tilt EQ. Is basically they basically from 150 hertz and up. They've reduced everything. They've reduced the whole lot. Some bits a little bit more than others. It appears by between about a kilohertz and 5 kilohertz. That's where most of the adjusting has come in place. And it's not huge, but that means they've reduced what was there. So they've reduced that more relatively than the very much, well, let's say harmonics, the very highs and the mids, which is good because the mids were already too recessed. However, overall, all they have done is hold the bass and reduce everything from 150 hertz and up. That took about 2 seconds of planning, and that's fixed nothing. And it was absolute shock. It was a bigger shock to me this time round to see the 6 kilohertz peak was still there, not even tweaked. It was still there relative to everything else, as bad as it was before. And it was a bigger shock than when they added it in the first place, when it wasn't even there on the original firmware. And then they added it on firmware 0.29. What's happened to Soundcore? This speaker does not seem to be helping their reputation at all. This has clearly come out early. The tweeters sound nasty. Do I sound like someone who works for Soundcore?
No! God, please, no! No!
So it's worked for them. Do you know why? Well, that's out because we've now got a bigger, warmer bass at the cost of some volume, because we've reduced mids and highs. And the way your ears work with these peaks, it smothered the highs. So yes, it has it seemingly made the speaker less harsh, and it's done that simply by relatively adding bass, and that's smothering the harshness. They could have just reduced that 6 kilohertz peak and tweaked it a little bit elsewhere, but no, they didn't have enough time. They had an hour before they went home that day, and so they just reduced everything relative to the bass. That's robbed you of some life and some volume. And here's the thing, one of those instances where you switch A-B, here's a recording before, here's a recording after. Oh, that sounds much smoother in the ears and there's a fuller bass. Yes, because they're now not loudness matched. So I'm going to now normalize it. A lot of you are crying and leaving in droves, but I'm going to do it. Here's the same 2 tracks, before and after, but normalized. So the volume is about the same to your ears.
I beg, steal, and borrow. I'm taking all the love from the world, but I can't seem to find it. I'm looking so I can feel better, feel like I'm good tomorrow. I beg, steal, and borrow. I'm looking at life passing by the window, asking how do you know if there's a way to find the truth. Yeah, I wonder I will find the lost and lonely. Could it be that only the lost can find a way? I'm hoping the time passes by day till I die. I don't know. I don't feel alive. I just don't feel right. Yeah, I'm taking all the love from the world, but I can't seem to find it. I'm looking so I can feel better, feel like I'm good tomorrow. I beg, steal, and borrow. I'm taking all the love from the world, but I can't seem to find it. I'm looking so I can feel better, feel like I'm good tomorrow. I beg, steal, and borrow.
So yes, even loudness matched, it is an improvement because the bass is bigger. When everything else is matched, you've got a bigger bass. That's nice, that's warm. On this channel, we tend to like bass. There's a lot of self-proclaimed audiophiles and coming under more and more attack. I say attack, it's almost being attacked with a feather. It's so ridiculous because none of them are true. I haven't had a true audiophile. How do you know they're not true audiophiles? It's because they don't even know what the definition of an audiophile is, and they're just spouting nonsense, to be quite honest. The exact stuff that you would read on the forum. That's how I know they're not real. They're just people who've read something else and they wanted to come on and they say, so they go on their Discord or on their forums. And they say, have you seen Adam Russ channel? He doesn't know nothing. He likes bass heavy. We're audiophiles. We like neutral sound and we don't like bass heavy. And so then they go straight on my channel when they don't have enough knowledge to underpin what they're trying to say. But anyway, I digress as usual. You will note, of course, this is all in custom mode, all this testing, because I was stuck in custom mode on the original firmware. We can see it is improved simply because it's more bass heavy. They could have done that right at the beginning. I haven't tweaked the rest of the stuff that they could have tweaked. And actually, I think they need to add a bit more life back in. It's too much. I like the bass, but it's smothering the rest of the sound a little bit too much. It's robbed it of a little bit of fizz and life. I think they should have had that back. But hey ho, what do I know? Nobody asked me to tune their speakers. So that was all in custom mode. I'm going to do some frequency response measurements exactly where we are now. So both custom mode and default mode.
Looking at the frequency response now for default mode on firmware 0.34, all the old issues remain. Recessed mids, very bright in the highs, and an incredible 6 kilohertz peak that remains. We do have an even bigger bass now, but it limits from 80% and above, and by the time you hit 100%, it's rolling off from 100 hertz. You also get bigger roll off into the harmonics compared to the volumes below 100%. So that puts even more focus on that 6 kilohertz peak, which absolutely dominates at maximum volume. My original EQ still holds. You can see how much flatter that is, albeit very wavy, compared to default mode. We overlay them. The only real change between old firmware, new firmware, is we've got more bass now, which of course you can reduce to taste in the app. But what you can't EQ, because there is no 6 kilohertz slider, is the 6 kilohertz peak. You have to work your way around it. So to fix the harshness of the original firmware, they've gone all around the houses and they just avoided doing the one thing they should have done: get rid of that 6 kilohertz peak that was not in the original firmware when I got my original Boom Plus.
So there's the thing, I haven't re-EQ'd it, but my original EQ, although not optimized, I haven't optimized like they've optimized the high frequency. It's not optimized for this firmware, but it still improves their firmware. Their default tuning is not balanced. It's got the deliberate suck out in the mids. We've still got a little bit too much in the peaks at the high end, especially that 6 kilohertz peak. And overall, they're a bit V-shaped. And with my EQ, it's a bit more balanced. I still prefer it. I haven't re-EQ'd it. Clearly, you can now tweak that. Clearly, there's more bass in my custom EQ than there was on the original firmware. But hey-ho, it sounds fine. Do you know why it sounds fine? It's because they've still done it within the limits. They haven't actually increased bass. They've reduced everything else relative. So they've not pushed anything beyond limits like they allow you to do when we push it in the app, even in their own app. They allow you to go beyond distortion limits. Is it because they don't have very good limiters, or they're just giving you the headroom? Because not everybody is appalled when they hear some distortion. You can listen to it. Your brain can adjust. And hey-ho, sometimes the trade-off in more bass or louder volumes is worth it. Purists, again, are going to come and, now what you talking about? None of us need to know what we're talking about, by the way. Doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong or you're right or wrong. If you like what you hear, end of story. So I'm just giving my opinion, my slant on things, not telling you, you must be deaf if you don't like my EQ or I don't like your EQ. To me, that's a little bit silly. That's been my comparison. Firmware 0.34 versus the older 0.29. Has it improved? Yes, it's improved because it doesn't sound as harsh as it did. And do you know why? Because they've gone all around the houses to fix something. They just had to fix a little bit in the EQ. I've got no idea why they haven't done it. Maybe it's not such an easy fix. I don't see any possible reason why that wouldn't be an easy fix, given that there wasn't 6 kilohertz peak. Then they put it in, and now they've left it in when everybody said, can you please take it out? Not least because we can't even EQ it out because the app doesn't have a slider there. And the slider's in the EQ, and the kind of graphic equalizer, it's closer to a graphic equalizer than other people give us, but it's still not absolutely true. The bands are very narrow. You can't actually touch that. You can only work around it. Just in case you need the headline, the headline specs yet again. Of course, it's made in China. We'll talk about the price. It's got an undersized battery, I've got to say. Talk about complaints. One of the other complaints is battery life not really up to spec. The reason is very bass heavy speaker. Not that it goes deep, but it's got a massive punch. And it goes very, very loud. So 46.1 watt hours is not a big battery for a speaker like this. SBC codec, Bluetooth 5.3, does do stereo pairing and does party mode 100 plus speakers, has got a USB-C connection, has got an auxiliary input, can be used as a power bank, can be used to make phone calls, does not have lights. Ooh. Do you know what? I wonder what that's all about. I did expect it to come with lights because it seems everybody wants lights now. Everyone's implementing it. I don't see why they didn't do it on this one. They would say 80 watts. I'm no longer getting into this What a
plonker.
When they tell you how they've measured it and what they're measuring, we can argue about it. But when they just give you a figure, absolutely meaningless. If it just says 80 watts, has no meaning. It floats in water, and that's good. It is IP67. It's waterproof, 1 meter water for 30 minutes, but it will float, and it is indeed dustproof. Got two 90mm woofers, two 25mm tweeters, and of course, it's got titanium woofers. It's got neodymium magnets. It's got two passive radiators, but there seems to be issues. Found it very good for YouTube streaming. 33 milliseconds is, you're not going to notice anything. That's great. And also was great on for the lag on auxiliary. It's got an app. You can do the EQ in the app, and like most of the Soundcore, the app is a lifesaver because often the so-called Soundcore signature sound is not great. Don't know who they EQ'd some of these speakers for, but it ain't for you and me. Maybe we know a little bit too much. That's been my roundup. Yes, it's less harsh, but you've got less volume, and actually it may be a little bit too smooth for some now, but then, yep, you can EQ it. But the 6 kilohertz slider, we cannot believe our ears and our eyes when we found out it's still there.
Idiot.
Didn't touch it at all. Thank you for watching.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.